Here at Innova, we're tracking what people eat in more than 90 countries in the world. We do this by building 3 big databases. So we have a database of new product launches in more than 90 countries. We ask consumers what they eat more of, what they eat less of, and why. And then we also want to know the size of the prize, so we market size that. So we pull this together into 3 big databases that you want to then turn into insights. We do that through searchable tools, we have dashboards, we write a lot of reports, and we do a lot of consulting to help our customers figure out what's coming next. My objective at Bridge2Food, I think it will be the same as everybody. We want to know what's going to happen in plant-based world and in plant protein world. So we know that it's a new category, it's a new sector, it's a new type of ingredient. Even though it's been around for a long time, it's still relatively new. There's a lot of headlines, especially in the US, about, plant-based has been put into dairy alternative, meat alternatives, but we all know it's much bigger than that. So I will be bringing lots of brand new research from consumers, also from this new products, an analysis of what's happening in launches around the world. We'll be comparing the different regions. We'll compare what's happening in North America and the US versus the rest of the world, and why. There's a lot of nuance to this. There's a lot of different applications. We see plant proteins being used in many different categories. Growth is faster in categories that you wouldn't necessarily expect. Sometimes it's used for proteins, sometimes it's used for other, maybe as a texture ingredient or some other type of functional ingredient. So I'm going to bring a big overview of here's where we are in the world and this is what's happening, and then go. We're going to then have these conversations about what we see that's happening. I'm sure everybody saw a couple of days ago that Nutella, there's now a plant-based Nutella. So again, there could hardly be a bigger message to the world that plant-based can be a lot of different things. We also know that Kraft Heinz, one of the biggest food companies in the world, certainly in the US, is also making a lot more effort into their plant-based alternatives as well. And it goes from hot dogs to macaroni and cheese, mayonnaise. So again, I think this really encapsulates, we all want to know, okay, that's great, what's going to come next? Ultra-processed foods is a huge topic, so I'm really looking forward to the panel on this because we did some research that we published in July, and we know that American consumers are very confused about how much ultra-processed food they eat. They don't seem to really know what it is, but when they are thinking about it, it's very ingredients driven. It's very linked to clean label. It's also linked to indulgent categories, also things like ready meals and I'm going to say junk food, thinking about consumers associate that very much with ultra-processed food. So there's still a lot of confusion. So the food industry never gets ahead of anything, ever. And so this is another one that's become kind of a media hotspot as well. So I'm really interested to see how people are seeing this impact what they're doing. Do they have CEOs saying we have to do this or do that or move away from this or that? I'm really interested to see what their experience is. And then we'll compare that to our research as well and try to make that connection between the consumer and what the companies are going to do to help consumers either understand what they're eating and what food companies can do to either improve their foods, to make them less processed or ultra processed. And again, as I said, we know consumers think it's very ingredient driven. So there's a really interesting connection between all of these things. So I hope we do something to kind of uncover what this means for everyone. What's next is the big question with plant proteins. So there is, I would say, a significant difference between what we see happening in Europe and what happens in the US. There's a lot more variety of products. I live in the Netherlands, and of course, there's a lot of research going on, it's really one of the richest ecosystems in the world when it comes to innovation. So I'm interested in things like cooking ingredients. That's certainly not as developed in the US as it is in Europe. So we're going to look at some of these things and see where the differences are. American consumers are still very open to it. There's very high testing rate. Price and taste and texture are still the big barriers. We've been saying that for probably 10 years. That hasn't changed. I do think there are a lot more consumers consuming more in Europe than in the US, but again, it has to do with variety, price, and so on. So we're going to look at all of that and try to help everyone figure out, like, what's the best strategy.